welcome to the Speaker Series, presented by the Entrepreneurs Forum, which is a weekly event featuring industry leaders held every Thursday here on Zoom. It's designed for learning and networking. I would like to introduce our sponsor, Mundo Digital Designs, which is a female-led web design and branding agency with a strong social impact focus. Every project with them is a step towards empowerment. For every new client they sponsor, therapy, and provide valuable business and design skills to women in need. Today's episode is Tech Horizons with George K. and his special guest, Dr. Nicholas Nadeau. Welcome, George and Nicholas.
Well, thanks, Erica. Really appreciate that.
Thank you very much, Erica.
So welcome, everybody. We've got a hot topic today. I know a lot of people are talking about AI. You can't open a magazine, a newspaper, anything without reading something about it. And half of it's positive and the other half's not so positive. Today, we're going to focus on the positives, for one. I'm not going to talk about politics. We're not going to talk about any of that stuff. But we're going to talk about how we, as small business owners and operators, can leverage AI. And I just wanted to put a caveat on small business. Small business really means anything under $40-ish million of revenue a year, which is just about every business in North America. So this affects everybody. It affects you. It affects everyone you know, whether you're an employer or whether you're an employee. AI has an impact or can have an impact on your business. And we have a special guest today, Nicholas Nadeau. He's a friend of mine and a specialist. And Nick, why don't you tell us what makes you qualified to be here? Why should we be listening to you?
Thank you very much for the introductions, George. So I'm Nick. Long-winded pathway to how I got where I am today. Once upon a time, I was a mechanical engineer and got pulled into building race cars, all the way to nearly a decade in biomedical engineering and surgical robots. PhD right at the cusp of AI in robotics and AI, and really looking at that human-robot collaboration at the start of agile manufacturing and Industry 4.0. Bunch of startups, had my own consultancy recently that was just acquired, have raised hundreds of millions of dollars with the likes of OpenAI building humanoid robots. And now I'm the CTO of Smart One, a global AI and data company where we're really looking at the data journey, that side of the equation, trying to streamline it to help accelerate building ethical, impactful AI. And so we're about 1,200 people in a number of countries around the world with headquarters here in Montreal.
Okay, so that was huge. Thank you. One of the things I saw Nicholas involved in was a robot that was inspecting our metro systems, our subway systems. Yep. Nick, can you talk about that? Because I think it's a good example of how the tech can be used for a very practical purpose.
Yeah. And so I also want to take a step back. Whenever we think about robotics or AI, I like to tie it back to the 4Ds. So you might have heard of this in blog posts or whatnot on the internet, but any intelligent systems application need to be tied to at least one of these 4 value propositions. Or my argument is that it's just a fancy application for the sake of being fancy. So you have dull, dangerous, dirty, and dear. And these are the 4Ds that every single AI or robotics application will tie itself to if it's valuable. So dull are any of those tasks that are repeatable, they're tedious, moving a box from point A to point B over and over again. Data entry. These are tasks that humans actually tend to get bored with over time. And when boredom comes, quality starts to drop off. All dangerous are any tasks we don't want necessarily send people into these tasks because of health and safety reasons. So that's everything from sending robots into the Fukushima nuclear reactor or those types of things where maybe it's best to let something else do it before we expose the people to it. Dirty jobs are the ones we don't want to be around because of the ick factor. So great example here in Montreal at the CHUM hospital, we have robots bringing soiled linens and dirty laundry back and forth from rooms to the laundromat in the basement. And so keeping people away from the dirty task that, once again, quality tends to drop off when we don't want to do the task ourselves. And then dear tasks are any tasks that have a high quality or cost component. So all of medical robotics fall into this. Anything with strict quality metrics and KPIs that we really want to track and maintain, that all falls into the dear category. So back to your original idea there, George, was the robot in the metro. So that was the Boston Dynamics Spot robot. We were working with the STM to deploy it with my partners at Ocidia here in Montreal. Basically, the exploration was, can we better bring predictive maintenance to the metro system? So things that they would normally do with people is every single night during the maintenance window hours, which is way late in the evening after 2 a.m., they would shut down the area for a bit to basically clean graffiti, clean trash, make sure that there's no obstruction of the rails, and reopen it essentially for the next day. But there was a lot of tasks there that people were doing, like counting how many new graffitis were here and there, how much trash was there. And you're always deploying people over and over and over again to these same situations, the same, tasks. And it's it's tedious. It is not necessarily
Definitely falls
optimized
under
for
the dirty
workforce.
category.
It falls under dirty. It falls under dull. 2 a.m. jobs are not necessarily known to be the most dynamic. And then we start to think about, okay, so if we're just counting trash, if we're just counting graffiti, can we have a robot with cameras to do that repeatedly? And then when you start to build up your data set, essentially, you start to get a mapping of high points, low points, almost like heat map over your weeks, over your months. And this data gives you heuristics to think about, where and when should I deploy my human resources? And so now we can bring the people side of the equation to higher value tasks, knowing that maybe every Friday there's an increase in trash because we've been counting it with an automated system over and over again. We can deploy people more resources to those days. And it's these little tips and tricks and basically optimization that allows people to focus on what humans are good at, the creative, the high value tasks, and let robots do the boring, tedious jobs like counting trash and counting new signs of graffiti and whatnot. Keeps people out of the railways, keeps people out of dark, dirty corners where they might trip and fall, and just makes it more for a higher quality, holistic experience.
Right. And so you can see by applying those 4Ds in almost any business environment, certainly whether it's manufacturing, shipping, warehousing, any of those types of applications become places where you can start thinking about implementing AI type of tools. Now, when you talk about AI and robotics, the first thing that comes to most people's minds is, okay, that's great for GM and these big companies or government, but how is a small, medium-sized business implement something like that? It sounds out of reach.
Yeah. So in general, I wouldn't recommend most people to apply robotics. For me, these systems, robots are just AI in the real world interacting. There are very few areas where you actually need to have that. And there are lower hanging fruit in many different other parts of the business that can be better utilized, better applied, better efficiency and effectiveness, and ROI can be gained by just these little things. So my favorite examples these days are, the ChatGPTs of the world and the coding agents now for programming and things like that. We're not replacing jobs. We're not, transforming the industry completely just yet. We're just making things a little more efficient bit by bit so we can focus on the higher value tasks. So even this example right now of how we're interacting, my typical workflow these days, especially when I was a consultant with my last business, involved a lot of report preparation, meeting notes, meeting minutes, trying to draft some sort of plan or roadmap for my clients, working with them. And I found I was a lot more effective when I speak. I can get my ideas, off and out there in a very unstructured stream of thought format. And so my typical workflow evolved. Instead of typing on Word or Google Docs all day long and getting writer's block in that way, I would just riff it and dump speech to text onto my phone or onto the computer and have completely unstructured, all the thoughts were there, all the ideas, syntax, grammar, punctuation, that wasn't there. Pass that through ChatGPT and just work on your prompts for your own personalization. Rewrite this, clean it up for syntax, readability, use bullet points, make it concise, and boom, my report is all done. And so once again, back to the human AI, human robot, human system collaboration, I do what I'm good at, that stream of thought, the ideation phase. The robots or automated AI systems does what it's good at, structuring things into bullet points and making sure that the punctuation is in place. It essentially acts as your own personal editor. That's just one very simple example of it. Day-to-day little 5%, 10% efficiencies. So that as a consultant, at the very least, I could spend more time doing things like billables or higher value tasks for my clients, bringing more value to the world instead of necessarily typing bullet points.
Okay, so I've got a question, and I'd like to invite everyone who's listening. If you have questions, please put them in the chat, and Wendy, you can sing them out, and we can address them, because I want this to be as interactive as possible. One of the things that I hear a lot from my clients about AI is, oh, it's not accurate. It fudges things. I think the term is hallucinations, I guess.
Yeah.
So what would you say, Nick, to folks who are worried about using these tools because it's going to be the garbage in, garbage out thing?
Yeah, and that's where put better garbage in, I guess, at a certain point. Increase the better that what goes into it, the better what comes out. And so nothing will ever be 100%. And so the people who go in with the expectation that AI will revolutionize and do 100% of the work for you, you're going to be disappointed pretty quickly. But it will get you 80% of the way there. And so we could focus on that last 20% of making it special. Simple things like, merging a bunch of documents together. It'll give you the gross points, and then you can now focus on filling in the details that really set you apart. I've worked on some projects with clients who are basically putting together RFPs. That the majority of their time was spent putting together RFPs. They've been doing this for decades, and they have a whole history of RFPs in the past. And so what we essentially built with them was a bit of a process flow from their SharePoint through one of these LLM type models, the ability to more quickly put together the boilerplate of the RFP. So based on the past RFPs we've done, based on this new context for this new client or project that we're pitching, give me the boilerplate, because honestly, a lot of it was copy and pasted, and you change some words and paragraphs to better fit this application. And now, the 80%, boring part of it has been taken care of, and I can spend that last 20% really focusing on what will set my request apart from the competition, what will get me ahead of the competition. And so what went from nearly months of work and full-time work turned into days, if not short weeks, so that we can spend that rest of that buffer time really perfecting our proposal. And that's just one of the many examples of, we're not trying to do it all. We're trying to do the boring parts, the dull parts, so that we could spend more time doing the dear parts.
Yeah. And I think it's a great example. There are lots of tools out there that, so for example, let's say you have a long PDF, you've got a 200, 300 page PDF. Yeah. You can plug that PDF into various tools, ChatGPT among one of them. There are several. We can maybe talk about some of the popular tools, and as we go further on in this discussion, and ask the tool to give me a summary of this based on what I'm interested in. Yeah. So, if you're an ABC consultant, or you're a lawyer, or you're an accountant, or whatever, you can say, based on my profile, and you've got to tell it what your profile is, of course, extract the points that I would be interested in. And that's a really big time saver. Now, I
would put a caveat on that, though, George. Yeah. Would be, don't just trust it. So a lot of people I see dump their PDFs in there, give me the summary, and then never actually read the PDFs. And it's sort of the same thing we've seen in social media, where everyone just reads the article headlines and maybe the first 5 words. No one actually reads the whole article. That's not going to set us up for success. So if we think of, I remember through like grad school and university and whatnot, one of the most effective reading and study and comprehension patterns is to pass through something quickly as a first pass, just to get the gist of the structure and the overall arguments and things like that. And then do a second pass where we're actually going to detail, knowing the general full context. We can essentially now skip that first step. Plug your PDF into the thing saying, hey, I'm George, I'm Nick, I want to parse this PDF in terms of entrepreneurship and whatnot. Give me the top 5 points. And now when I go through the article, I have context that I can better understand. Oh, they're leading up to this argument. Oh, okay, this is like, part 1 of 3. You have a better overall understanding of the landscape that you're entering instead of going in blind.
100%, 100%. And that pretty much, that idea flows through a lot of different tools. how many times have you had to prepare a PowerPoint presentation, for example, and you're staring at either a blank, blank slide, or maybe you're just got a template that's been provided for you by Microsoft or whatever tool you're using. Well, now with AI tools, you could ask the AI to create the presentation for you based on either a PDF or based on other documents that you've already prepared. And now you have a framework with which to work on. And then rather than spending all the time setting it up, now you can just spend all your time tweaking it.
Yeah,
right?
And I would even argue that there's tweaking that will happen in the PowerPoint land, moving your images left, right, making it all align the way you like it. But there's also tweaking in these tools land. And so when you do your first, let's say we're thinking about ChatGPT type things, prompts, give me a 10-slide PowerPoint on, the powers of entrepreneurship and what every SME entrepreneur should know, they'll give you an outline. The first time it's going to be pretty fluffy. Because remember, it was trained on the whole of the internet, let's say. And what is the average of the internet? Well, very fluffy blog posts for the most part. And so that first pass will be
cat videos.
But exactly, cat videos and whatnot. And what a lot of people don't realize is you can interact with these systems, and they have what is called a context window. They have a decent amount of memory. And so it's by iterating, it's by pushing back. And essentially, I treat them like an intern. You got to coach your intern. I don't like this, do it this way. I don't like to do that. But instead of them going back to their desk and coming back to you, 15 minutes later, it's a little more instantaneous and interactive. And so your first one, it'll be fluffy. Say, no, that's too fluffy. Focus more on this specific topic. They'll come back to you with another one. Okay, no, I don't like that section. Do it like this. And when you iterate, you'll find more and more that it will become crafted the way you think it is, but you need to do that coaching. If you just trust the first pass, of course, it's not going to be revolutionary. It's going to be fluffy internet babble.
Yeah, very important. So I think one of the tools or one of the skill sets that we're going to learn as we develop and become better with AI tools is kind of the same tool sets that we had to learn when search first came out. If you remember when search first came out, I don't want to date myself, but way before Google, you had to really be skillful in the way you crafted your search terms if you wanted to get good results. It's gotten better now, of course, because the algorithms are better, but it's kind of the same thing. If you ask it really good questions, very specific questions, organized well, then you're going to get a better response. And I think people will get better at that skill set as time goes on.
Exactly. And remember, like underneath they're robots, essentially. You have to be pretty to the point and direct with it. Of what you want and almost why sometimes. Things I like to include, my favorite word I always use in my prompts are being concise, because they tend to ramble. Otherwise, things like what my target audience is, I'll often put in there. Write it for a software developer audience, write it for executive stakeholders, write it for
a lender.
Lender, explain me like I'm 5, talk to me like I'm a pirate. You can do anything. You just have to be specific and direct with it. And honestly, don't be afraid sometimes. And then there's, little tips and tricks you learn on the internet because these things have been trained off of blog posts and internet forums and whatnot. Some of the nuances of how humans interact with each other also fall into this. So if you ask these systems to think through things step by step, you'll often get a better result because that's how it'll actually process it, is almost in a stepwise pattern, building off the last block of knowledge. You could also do really silly things like, I will give you $200 if you do this for me. And it tends to perform better because the bribe almost works. You could go into the dark context and say like a puppy will be killed if you don't do this right. And it'll tend to perform better. Weird nuances that people are fundamentally studying right now in the research and academic world of why these systems behave like that. But because it's been trained on the corpus of human knowledge and human interaction and human garbage on the internet, if you will, that's how it behaves right now. And so once again, if you think of it as a fresh out of school intern and how you would almost interact with an intern, not too far off.
Yeah, I hear you. Do we have any questions, Erica? No? Okay. So let's talk about prompts. You used the word prompt. Maybe we should explain to the audience what a prompt is, and maybe we should talk a little bit about prompt best practices, because I think people are talking to ChatGPT like they're talking to an intern, like they're using language like they're talking to a human, and we know that that's not the most effective way to communicate with AI tools.
Yeah, you'd be surprised. It's a great starting point, I'd say. And I think if you have that starting point, you then start to see, as you play with these systems, more and more what parts are needed and which parts are just superfluous that you can, not do anymore. But this all falls into what's being called these days prompt engineering. And so a prompt is essentially just the message you send to these systems to initiate a conversation or initiate the next step in our conversation, if you will. And a lot of these systems have been built around what's known as conversational AI. They've been tuned in order to best interact through a conversational approach, which is why a lot of their interfaces look very similar to chat apps, MSN Messenger back in the day, and things like that, where we have little text bubbles and we're essentially talking with some other entity on the other side. And that's all prompting is what is the message I'm sending you to prompt you to send me a reply? And not only just any reply, a reply that is crafted in the way that I'm expecting. And essentially, if we do prompt engineering right, we're aligning expectations between these systems and our own expectations in ourselves.
So here's a power tip that I give to my clients around using any of the tools, whether it's Copilot, ChatGPT, or any of the various plugins that you see in just about every piece of software these days. My tip is create an Excel spreadsheet. In fact, I can share mine that I use that organizes your prompts. So you can organize your prompts based on different tasks. So a very popular one is responding to emails. So you typically get a certain set of emails that kind of come to you on a regular basis. You can create a prompt, a pre-made prompt, like a template, and you can put the various variables, so the client name, the company name, the policy number, the blah, blah, blah. You can put these things like a template all in place in your Excel spreadsheet, and then you can copy and paste that into ChatGPT or any other tools, and you just put in the variables that you need, so the client name or the policy number or blah, 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 and then that feeds into ChatGPT, and you get the appropriate answer that you need. Of course, always with the caveat of anonymizing your information, right, Nick? We don't want to be putting detailed client information. So the company name would be ABC Co. or whatever, right?
Yeah, there's a lot of company ABCs in my prompts.
Yes.
And anything that's easy for me to just, find and replace later on.
Correct.
Especially when you're using open systems. If you're using a free system, you are the product essentially, and so you're giving away your information. Eventually, if you are in an enterprise network and with security arrangements, you can do other things, but within the general context of what we're talking about today, don't put anything proprietary, intellectual property, sensitive data into there. Replace it ahead of time and then re-replace it afterwards when you go into your email. On top of your tip and trick there, having your own templates, what I also like to do is, once again, the generic stuff that comes back is often fluffy internet babble and that tone and style. I like to inject my own tone and style into there. Yeah. So nowadays, I know generally what to include in my prompts. Be straightforward, be confident, be personable, those types of things. But especially at the beginning, or when you want to maybe create a company voice, take your existing blog post, take your existing emails, stick it into there, and ask the system, how would you describe this tone and voice?
Yep.
And it's going to spit back to you, if you put a bunch of New Yorker articles in there, it's going to be professional, eloquent, etc. You can now take that copy and paste and use that as a template for your future prompts. And now it'll be in the voice of the New Yorker. It'll be in the voice of, the CBC, the voice of George, the voice of Nick. You can craft voices in different tones and styles based on example content, which is very effective, especially from a brand point of view. If you want your marketing team or you and everyone around you sharing this common process, but the outcome still be, even if different people are using it, be the same company voice, that's an effective way of maintaining brand consistency.
Yeah, you tied in exactly what my next point was going to be. Many people have this idea, I don't want to use AI because it's robotic. It sounds like a robot, or it's not personal, or it's not me. But as Nick said, if you feed it with the right information, then it will start to sound like you. You could train it, you can coach it to sound like you. And that's why having your prompts organized and cataloged and tweaked, you tweak the prompts, then that consistency, that copy paste consistency. So whether it's a blog post that you're writing, whether it's a LinkedIn post you're writing, whether it's a reply that you would typically always give to like a client inquiry, if you keep those cataloged and you're tweaking them, then that consistency will come from that process that you're following. You see, yeah. You're training your tool to work your way, but it's not because the tool is learning who you are. It's because your prompts are getting better and your prompts are staying consistent. That's where it comes from. The AI isn't learning who you are specifically. It's the prompts that are training the AI to do that.
And I'd also extend that fits into the whole category of context. The AI system only has the context and the knowledge of what you give it. It's been trained on the whole internet, and you could pull random bits of information here and there, not necessarily accurate, usually the gist of things. But then the context you inject in your prompt is really what it's working with. And so if you're writing an email, to just say write an email to a colleague XYZ about ABC, it's going to be the fluffiest thing in the world. But if you also copy and paste, and I often say, like, given the context below, do X, Y, Z, and I will just dump unstructured context at the bottom of my prompt and just fill in as much as possible. Maybe the last email I sent them, maybe the project we're working on, random bits of information there. Now it's going to have more to work with, more specific knowledge, that almost domain expertise to the situation and task at hand.
Right. So just to put that into context for some people from a real business point of view. So you've created a proposal for XYZ company, and now you have to do another proposal for ABC company. You could feed the first proposal into a tool like ChatGPT and say, based on ABC in this proposal, I'd like a new proposal that highlights ABC, XYZ, and it will generate that for you. And then, of course, your job, of course, as always, review it and clean it up. But now you can focus on the reviewing and cleaning up, not the creation. Did I get that right,
yeah.
Nick?
Yeah, no, and I'd even say, as part of the cleanup stage, often when you do the whole proposal at once, it can only remember so much, and that's called the context window. A lot of these systems can only do so much at once.
Yeah.
And so if you say, if you send a multi-page proposal in, it's probably going to give you a bit of a one-pager with pretty lightweight paragraphs and whatnot in between. The second pass you go in is now go section by section. So given the full context that you've had so far, write me just the intro section, write me just the discussions and whatever, and then it'll get more verbose and in depth and go in. But so doing that multi-pass approach, and it's very much like we talked about before, it's iterating with these systems, saying, no, I didn't like this, I want this, just focus on this one section, include these topics in here. It's just a much faster pace. And so you'll notice as you get skilled at this and this becomes part of your workflow, what used to take days to put together presentations or proposal is going to take an hour or two. And now you can focus more time on the customers and other billables, et cetera, et cetera. It's workflow efficiency.
Okay, that's great. That brings me into the next topic. Systems analyzing systems is a great task for AI. So think of a small business. You've got your accounts payable, accounts receivable. You may have some shipping. You've got customer service issues that you've got to deal with. All of these systems can be analyzed by AI, and then it can give you recommendations for how to improve it. So, Nick, in your experience, how have you seen this type of thing done to, like you said, reduce time, like become more efficient and allow humans to focus more on other humans?
Yeah. So the two areas I've often seen is there's the people side of it and there's the process side of it, let's call it. So on just process automation and things like that, we find that some of these systems now, what used to take, months to put together an RFP takes hours or days. Okay, so now we have a more streamlined process and workflow. What used to take us, more thinking to put together social media posts or blog posts. Now we have a more streamlined approach. We could take the same article and automatically spin up, generated images or tweets and LinkedIn posts based on your topic. And so we have a more efficient process of the build once, use many methodology that people like to use, especially on the marketing side and business development side, for your content. So that helps with reusability, recycling ideas, and just general throughput. On the people side, I like it because it can empower people. You can think of it as you have a set of domain experts. They're your people in your business who truly understand what's important, what isn't important, what can really drive the next level of success. So one where I see a lot is just brainstorming. Here's my current dilemma. What are the top 5 approaches that other businesses in a similar situation? And once again, more context, dump. I often like taking like the about page of my website of like my company, all that, and dumping in there because that gives a lot of brand, market, domain, context, and things like that. And it will generate some good ideas just to initiate that brainstorming approach to how you can maybe break through this problem and get to a solution. But once you actually have solutions start to be built, your people are the best people to help fine tune and train these systems. And so instead of being, the grunt workers themselves through a lot of these tasks, we move the people into the quality control, quality assurance side of things, where they become our special ops, if you will. These systems will run, they might automate a few things, but then our people come in to ensure that the final quality is what's expected, that the corner cases and the things we didn't expect, we can resolve those still manually, but the day-to-day grunt work is taken care of in a streamlined process.
Yeah. Another really another good way to use AI is for brainstorming. It's a great way to brainstorm, and the tool will give you options that you may not have thought to think about. And those are the subjects that you want to bring to your team, to your experts, to discuss. It'll give you a broader spectrum of questions than you might have been able to think of on your own. So it's a great place to start when you're using a tool. Yeah. Okay, I know everyone's probably thinking about tools. I know everyone loves, silver bullets and great tools to get fast results. I'm going to talk about one that we're using right now. I don't know if everyone can see this, but I've got my AI note taker plugged into this Zoom call. And when that puppy's finished, I'm going to have a full transcript of this meeting in written out, typed out for me. I'm going to have a summary of the whole thing, and I'm going to have action items that were discussed in this meeting, all done by AI. And when I look it over at the end of the thing, maybe 20% mistakes, not much more. It'll screw up a few words if I say them really quickly, or if there are specialized expressions that were used, especially if I start speaking French, that really screws up. But it's good enough to give you most of what you need. And that's something that saves me anyways, literally hundreds of hours a year, literally hundreds of hours. Because I would typically have to make those notes out of memory or take my chicken scratch notes and figure them out and then send them off to the client or put them in my file. That's just one example of leveraging AI like in the day-to-day to save you time.
Yeah.
What are some of your favorites, Nick?
That brings up, so you said an absolute key phrase there, good enough. And that's everything we're doing with AI and all these tools right now. Unless you are building the enterprise level integration and spending millions of dollars to get it perfect, think of AI as good enough. That is the whole point, is we are trying to do the 80% so that we can focus on that last 20 that we are specialized in. So once again, you said it exactly. Note taking is one of my favorite unlocks. Previously, I've always been a notepad, pen and paper type person, or my iPad with the pencil. And I noticed in meetings, I'd be looking down a lot. I wouldn't be engaged. I'm trying to keep up with the notes and whatnot. And it's all chicken scratch at the end of the day that only I can interpret on a good day. Now, I use I personally use Firefly's note taker. There's a whole bunch of different ones out there, but it does exactly that. You get a transcript and you get action item summaries. And a lot of times, even if the same thing, it's between English and French or whatnot, saying words too quickly, it's completely incorrect. but it's 80% of the way there. And it's often good enough to jog my memory on some of those exact topics, or I could just re-listen to, because it's recorded, those portions of it if I want the exact precise answer. So now I can maintain engagement with my customers, with my people that I'm working with. If I really want to really nail down a very important point, I still have my pen and paper around, but that's reserved for the high value points that are critical. And usually if you're in an engagement with somebody and a point like that comes up, everyone's pausing to take down that one. So you're not necessarily left out. Besides the chat GPTs for your day-to-day management, one that I've really enjoyed lately has been reclaim.ai. I don't want to sound like this is pitching things. I've been a big time blocker. That's been my personal productivity strategy, is I start my week off. I know what my to-do list looks like. I know who I want to meet, and I will block those times in the calendar. So if you ever look at my calendar, and this has taken some coaching and some stakeholder alignment with my fellow colleagues, is my calendar is always full because I've pre-blocked the time for at least the upcoming week of what I'm doing when, what is high priority. But I used to do that manually. And so, fires come up, wrenches are thrown into the gears, and I spent a lot of time reorganizing my time blocking because, an important client meeting came in. Okay, now where can I play the Tetris game and move this somewhere else? So this app, Reclaim AI, basically does that for you automatically. So it connects to my Jira, my Kanban project management software. It connects to my Google tasks and my emails and things like that. I can put manual tasks in there. It will automatically prioritize things based, this task is due by Friday. So now I'm going to start protecting time and actually fully blocking it in your calendar. Whereas if that task is due 3 weeks from now, and you said it only takes you a half hour, an hour to do, I'm going to allow people, it never happens, but that's a bit of discipline of knowing, giving ballparks of how long what your estimate is of what you want to reserve in terms of time. But if it's due far out, it's going to say, that could be seen as a lower priority. So I'm going to allow people to book meetings with you this week. And it's like a mixture of Calendly with project management and time blocking. So now you can have dynamic prioritization of what's more important, this meeting or this task? What's more important, taking an actual lunch break and optimizing? And it allows your calendar to be more of a living entity rather than a static fixed thing that you're having, once again, a dull chore of maintaining.
Yeah. And it'll say things like, well, hey, Nick, you said you want to work out twice a week.
You keep canceling that. Why are you canceling that event there?
Gotcha. Okay, so that's a great segue into tools. Another tool that I like to use that is incorporating AI more and more these days is Canva. Canva is a great tool for small and medium-sized businesses. It's good enough. Like we said, I don't recommend you firing your graphic designer or firing your ad agency, but working with a tool like Canva, you can create a lot of really, really high-end content that is augmented by AI so that it can be very personal to your brand. So your colors, your style, we already talked about, the language. If you get your prompts right, it'll get the language right. But some of the automatic tools that it has built in are so good that you would need a super high-end computer and you would need super high-end software to get the same kind of results that now you can get just by, if you got a browser and a fairly decent internet connection, that's all you need. And it can give you very, very good results and save you literally thousands of hours a year of futzing around with a graphic design software, right? Just learning these tools can sometimes take a long, long time. So that's one of my favorite tools that's out there right now that is saving people a lot of time. You got another one, Nick?
On my end, for anyone out there on the software side, the GitHub Copilot, which is basically part of the whole Microsoft and GitHub ecosystem there, has basically taken away the need for boilerplate code in a lot of ways. And so if you think of your IT team, your software team, if you have any devs involved, the amount their salaries often cost, saving just a half hour a month, 10 minutes a month, more than pays what these things are worth on a SaaS offering at, 10 to 20 bucks a month. And we start to find that a lot of the things we do day to day are dull, repetitive tasks like filling in boilerplate here and there that, these are solved problems. And so these systems are trained, once again, on the internet, on the corpus of human knowledge that existed so far. So it's essentially trained on all the existing solved problems. And by using tools like this, we can more quickly get through the boilerplate solve stuff and focus on the unsolved high value drivers.
Yeah, another thing that I've been using my tools for, and we're going to talk really quickly about the type of tool to use for the type of task, because that's really critical. We'll get into that just in a second. Is you've probably spent countless hours either surfing YouTube videos or surfing the web in general for how to do this with my software. How do I get this result from my software, right? That's a endless, warren of videos that you could be watching. Well, put it into a chat GPT or into a Copilot and say, what's the best way to get ABC done on my XYZ software? And that can save you, just that alone can save you tons of time.
So I would add an addendum to that as well, is GPT and whatnot. Once again, they're trained off of what existed before, and nowadays they have the ability to search if you put some like URLs and stuff in there. But if it's a well-known solved thing, it'll do a pretty good job how to fix X, Y, Z and things like that. You could probably avoid having to go on Quora or Stack Overflow for the most part. But then there's some things like, what are the top 10 best tools for XYZ or things like that. That requires a little more up-to-date knowledge that GPT will, that's where the hallucinations might come in, or it'll start quoting you deprecated knowledge. So there's a tool called perplexity.ai that basically combines a lot of the GPT-like interface with live search results. And so what it's essentially doing is giving you up-to-date information with the generative text around it, but citing you real, live, up-to-date sources as part of its response. And so great way for, that first pass of research. So everything, once again, everything's, how can I get through my first pass, that 80% draft copy, rough draft, all done for you. That's what these tools really provide you. If I'm doing research on market research, dynamics, comparing two tools, comparing different businesses, competitor analysis, dump that into these tools, and it'll give you the first pass with citations and things like that, so that you, as the creative human, can go deeper on the exact topics and the value points that drive and differentiate your business.
Right. So that takes me to the tools thing. I know it, but for the sake of the audience, so ChatGPT, if you're using the free version of ChatGPT, for example, versus the paid version of ChatGPT, and a tool like Copilot, for example, what are some of the basic differences between the two? And I think you touched on it a little bit as far as the perplexity thing is concerned.
Yeah, so a lot of these ones all have free tiers, and typically what you get on the paid tiers, either higher availability, access to the latest and greatest of the models and the run times underneath it. So ChatGPT is a great example. I believe on the free tier, you're limited to GPT 3.5, which is pretty outdated in terms of quality and capability. And it's a night and day difference when you upgrade to the GPT-4 versions. You have higher availability, so that means you can do more messages per hour. You'll have front of the line access. They tend to run faster as a whole. So just from a performance increase point of view, if you value your time, you'll value the paid plans of most of these tools.
Yeah, and there's a difference between Copilot and ChatGPT vis-a-vis the live access to the web. Now, my understanding is that Copilot has live access to the web, whereas ChatGPT, at least in the non-paid version, if you're not using the right kind of plugins, it's backdated to what, September 22 or something like that?
Last year-ish. So in general, so the latest GPTs have access to the web. One thing, you have to prompt it to get access to the web. Like this is part of the crafting the prompt, prompting it to do that research, to go out there. Here's the URL, go check it out. Otherwise, Copilot built on top of Bing and things like that, really it's putting this front and center as its approach and methodology. And so that comes back to different companies, different systems have different user stories and intentions and interactions and assumptions about how the workflow will be used. And so finding the tool that best fits your workflow is key. And that's why, honestly, the best way to learn these things, there's honestly no courses or one and done blog articles that will get you up to speed. You really have to just jump in, try it out, try a few of them, see which one best fits for your workflow and your business, and just keep using it day to day and dive deeper. It's sort
You
of
can't
like
break it, right?
you can't really. Well, I won't open that can of worms. But
You could probably break it, but we can't break
there's
it.
a lot of you'd be surprised how easy sometimes they are to break them. But at the end of the day, the goal is to experiment and get proficient. Think of this as the new generation of Excel spreadsheets and Word.
Yeah.
Think of this as the new generation of just being able to Google search, we talked about before. What people used to say that good Googling was a skill. Now good prompting is the new skill. Being able to do Word documents and Excel and PowerPoints is a skill. These are all just part of what's becoming more and more the table stakes of skills. And sort of almost, I don't want to fear monger too much, but AI is not going to replace jobs. AI isn't going to get rid of your business. Your competitor who leverages AI will beat you.
Bingo. That's right. 100%. It's just another tool. I mean, we don't need to beat that dead horse. I think everybody on this channel or that will be listening to this understands that. So again, let's just try to focus in on efficient use of the tool. And efficient use of the tool is basic project management skills, right? If you use the basic project management skills to your approach to using AI or any other tool, then you'll have success. If you're doing a hit and miss kind of approach to using it, you're going to have less success, and your success will be spotty. It won't be consistent. And what do clients hate? Clients hate inconsistent performance. McDonald's has built a multi-billion-dollar corporation serving shitty hamburgers consistently. That's how they do it, right? So having a consistent way of using AI or any other tool is going to be one of the keys to having success. Certainly over your competitors who aren't doing that.
100%. It's all about that consistency is key, and building your own workflow that creates that consistency, that robustness, and always thinking about who's getting the value out of the output at the end of this. There's value for yourself in terms of the efficiency gains you get. There's also value that you're propagating to your customer, your clients, that get the benefit of you being more efficient. So either cost reductions or higher value output, or just new projects and new capabilities.
Yeah, one thing I can tell you, one of the things we see a lot is, people want results quickly. They want results fast. And oftentimes the first person who responds, the first person who gets engaged with the client wins. And having tools like AI, leveraging AI tools to speed you up and make sure that first response is good enough, doesn't have to be 100%, never will be, as long as it's good enough, that can often mean the difference between winning a deal or losing a deal. So that's part of why we want to leverage AI in small business, because the whole advantage of small business over big business, well, one of the big advantages is the nimble factor, right? Being nimble, being quick, being able to customize your response to the client's needs. Harder for larger organizations and easier for small organizations if they are set up properly. And that's one of the things that AI can really help you do well if you work it.
Exactly. I like to focus a lot on, the triangle of good, cheap, fast, if you will.
Yeah.
Choose two. This really lets us focus on increasing that velocity while retaining or even increasing quality in a lot of ways. We don't necessarily want to be cheap as small businesses or entrepreneurs. We're there as the boutique, the differentiating factor from those, enterprise generic scale economies. And so really being able to turn hit the full throttle on good and nimbleness on velocity, go to market, getting that first touch point with the customer. And when they feel that you are there and you are ready, that is a big differentiating factor.
Yeah, 100%. I get it. So one of the first things you could do with playing around, I use the word playing, but it's really experimenting with these tools, is to ask it questions like that. So given XYZ scenario, what could I do to improve, or what could I do to speed it up, or what steps can I remove from this process that would allow me to get a better response? So those are some of the starting points for your questions to improve the way you do things using these tools, using AI tools, because the number of these tools that are popping up are like apps on your phone. There's like thousands of them being created daily, and it's impossible to keep up with them. So using a tool like a ChatGPT or any of the other ones will help you to narrow your search and become more efficient and test things faster.
That brings up a great point there, George, is that these tools, I see it almost as 3-month sprints. Every 3 months, the world is completely different, and there's whole new paradigms of tools and capabilities out there. And so we have to keep up with that, or else you'll get left behind. And it's a new struggle, it's a new thing to do, if you will, but it's part of really driving business forward, is keeping up to date with the latest tools. Now, you have to parse through a lot of the fluff that's out there, and there's a few good tools that will last the test of time. But in general, just keeping your finger on the pulse of really what's going on in the ecosystem, and what new thing every 3 or so months can I integrate, can I experiment with, can I play with and learn, that can give me a few percentage points of increased efficiency that could differentiate me from my competition.
Yeah. And I know that there's a resistance. I know that some small business owners will say, all that stuff is a distraction. It's distracting me away from the most important thing. And I get it. This thing could be an endless rat hole. But if you do it like anything else, you say, I'm going to dedicate X amount of hours per week, or I'm going to dedicate X amount of hours to one of my staff members a week to do this kind of structured research, and then have a means to apply it to your business, then it's no longer playing or a waste of time. It's R&D. And if you do it properly, it's going to give you a result if you do it well. Yeah. But you got to do the R&D. The R&D has to be built into your business, or you will be left behind.
And I would also say, I want to extend what John Dewar, I think it was, measure what matters.
Yeah, that's right.
If you don't go into it with a question or a hypothesis of what you want to improve and have some sort of metrics around it, then it becomes a fishing expedition. Then you might be wasting time and just spinning it. But you say, hey, it takes me way too long to put together an RFP or draft proposals. Now you can take a step back and look at the marketplace and say, are there any tools out there that can help me with this one problem? Correct. That's an iterative thing. Maybe this month you look at, marketing copy efficiency. Next month you look at RFPs. Bit by bit, you go in with a focused, agile mindset, answer some key questions, get some key results, measure the before and after, and move on. And it makes it quite lightweight and very MVP type approach, almost lean startup, if you will.
Yeah, agreed. Well, Nick, I think we're coming to the top of the hour. I don't know if Erica's got any comments or any messages she has to give out to folks, but I can say this has been a really great conversation, eye-opening for me. My big takeaway was Reclaim AI. That's a new one for me, so I'm gonna scratch that and see what value I can get out of using that tool. And I'm going to share my my hack sheet for creating good prompts, so that everyone who's watching this will be able to, benefit from it. And I look forward to our next Entrepreneurs Forum event. I don't have a guest yet. I wish I could. I don't have one yet. We'll announce it.
We're working on that.
Stay tuned.
We're working on that. But I do want to thank you, Nicholas, for joining us. It was a pleasure to have you on. A lot of great information passed between the two of you. It was just enjoyable to sit back and watch how you two interacted with each other as well. So I want to thank you both, George and Nicholas. Thank you for that. Don't forget to join us next week. We have our episode of Marketing Maverick with Fritz Kalinek and his lovely guest, Solicina. So everybody will love that. And always want to thank our sponsors of Mundo Digital Designs.